welcome back to Cuckoo for Books. My name is Salva and today I'm going to be debuting my very own original Avengers book tag. Before we go any further, I just want to state, it says on the title that this is going to be Endgame spoiler free because I'm hopefully going to be releasing this video just over a week since the film's premiere, so I don't want to ruin it for anybody. Backstory of this tag: I saw Avengers on Monday. It filled me with so much love for the movie franchise. I couldn't get to sleep. It was 3:30. Thoughts were running through my head, so I was like, I need to channel this. So I decided to make my very own tag, the Avengers book tag. There have been a bunch of these book tags floating around for quite some time. There have been Marvel book tags, there have been Avengers book tags. None of them were really the tags that I was looking for personally when it came to the questions being asked, so I decided to make my own. So we're gonna do that and we're gonna have fun, hopefully. I'm gonna say this now at the beginning of the video. If you want to do this video, even if I haven't tagged you, please go ahead and do it. Have fun. We are taking into account films up until Captain Marvel. None of the questions really have any spoilers. The direction of the question might hint at the book. We'll start off with pretty early MCU characters, so you'll sort of get the feel of it, and then when, you know, we hit Black Panther and you realize this is too much for me, you can bow out. For those doing this video, you can do as little or as many or pick your favorite Avengers. This is going to have 16 questions because there are a lot of Avengers. Now I'm hyped. Let's get to the tag. So the first Avenger on my list is the one that started it all, Iron Man. And the question is, which book started your love for a specific genre? I would have to go with The Royal Diaries, and this is an anthology series. I read this way back. I want to say the 6th grade. This was the first historical fiction series I had ever read. This book in particular sparked my love for the Tudor era. This is why I have an entire shelf dedicated to historical fiction, because I read this when I was 11 and just never put the genre down. Next, we're gonna go with Captain America, and that is a book that is not set within this time period. Was originally basing this question off of the fact that the first Captain America movie was set in the 1940s. I was gonna ask, pick a book that's set in the past, but that's very limiting, especially with a lot of sci-fi books nowadays. So I decided to expand it to just any book that isn't set in the contemporary time period. And because we are doing Captain America, I decided to specifically choose a book set in the 1940s. This is Prisoner of Night and Fog by Anne Blankman. So in this book, there's a girl, Gretchen Mueller, who has been raised in a Nazi family, and her dad was one of the henchmen of Hitler. She suddenly encounters a Jewish reporter who tells her, you've been sheltered this whole time and you think they're doing good. No, they're horrible. They're murderers. And it's her coming to terms with that everything she's been brought up to believe is wrong. And it's a really, really good book. It has a sequel, but it can stand as a standalone. The sequel was a little weaker than the first book, so if you would want to read this alone, you could, and then just pretend the sequel never existed. So the next question is Thor, and it's pretty simple. Which book character would you deem worthy to wield Thor's hammer? This is gonna sound like a really odd choice because I'm choosing from the contemporary romance genre, but it would have to be Jesse De Silva from the Mediator series by Meg Cabot. Jesse is a ghost in this book. Throughout the series, you just continually are reminded of how noble he is and how self-sacrificing he is without seeming like that broody kind, like, oh, I'm gonna die for you because I love you and I'm so tortured. He's just genuinely a good guy, and he has that noble spirit, always thinks of other people before himself. He wants to fight for what's good. Next question would be Black Widow. Which character in a book series or a book do you think deserves his or her own spin-off? I had to go with Christina Rosales from the Dark Artifices series. Christina Rosales throughout the entire trilogy has sort of played second banana when it came to Emma Carstairs. She did have her own plot points, but if it came down to let's focus on Emma or let's focus on Christina, Christina would always be shoved aside. The ending of the trilogy, not giving anything away, but it would make a pretty good setup for a good spin-off series. I would just love to see where Christina goes from there. The next Avenger we have is the Hulk, and which book made you Hulk out? If you don't want to know spoilers to the Hunger Games, when I put the book down, that's when it's safe. I've only thrown one book in my life, Catching Fire by Suzanne Collins, particularly the moment when we find out that Katniss, after all she's been through, is being sent back into the arena. When that moment happened in the book, I remember just yelling and throwing my book and freaking out, but at the same time really excited about what was gonna happen next. But it was such a game changer that I just freaked. Next, we're going with Hawkeye, and I tried to be a little like poetic, kind of metaphorical with this, but I don't know how well I did. Let me know. For Hawkeye, the question would be, which author has really good aim and never misses? ... your heart. Which author gets you every time? No matter how many books they come out with, you just pick up their books and devour them over and over and over again. For me, it would have to be Esther Freisner. Ever since 2008, she's come out with duologies about significant women in history, and sometimes not so significant women in history. And so the first duology I ever picked up that was hers was this called Nobody's Princess, and it was about Helen of Troy, and this opened my mind to all kinds of storytelling. She is amazing. She's brilliant. It opened my mind to Greek mythology, to epic fantasies, to historical fiction. I just have so much love for this series. Then after this duology, she wrote about the Egyptian queen Nefertiti, and then after that her duology was about Himiko, who was this female shaman in feudal Japan. After that she did, which I have not read yet because I'm afraid it's her last, but the next one is set in Scotland. She is a really good author. My only complaint is that her books are terribly difficult to find, but you know, if you're in Manila and you want to borrow it, hit me up. I just want to share my love for this book so much and for this author so much. Now that we've finished the 6 core original Avengers, I just listed things out of order and it's gonna be a free-for-all, but for continuity purposes, let's end with Captain Marvel. How's that sound? Great? Good? Okay. So the next one I have on my list would be Doctor Strange, and it is, if you could go back in time and change any book moment, which would it be? Ah! There's only one answer to this question. I grabbed the book from my shelf so fast. If you're afraid of being spoiled on any particular Leigh Bardugo book, I'm gonna put the book down when it's safe for you to unmute. I would obviously go back to, spoilers, I would all go back and change Matthias's death in Six of Crows, or rather Crooked Kingdom. Technically he dies in Crooked Kingdom. It's been a while since a fictional character's death has rocked me as much as it did Matthias, and I would go back and change it all if I could. For those of you who don't know, just because I try to make this channel as welcoming for non-readers and readers alike, or people who want to get into reading, Six of Crows is a high fantasy series and it is essentially a heist. So it's been marketed as Ocean's 11 meets Game of Thrones, and Matthias is one of the chief thieves, and he is a witch hunter. He's been almost brainwashed all his life into thinking people who have magic are devils and they're everything that's wrong with the world, and obviously, guess what? He falls in love with someone with magical ability, and they took it all away from him because he died. Next up on my randomly random list would be Black Panther. What is a book that is well deserving of its hype? I would have to go with the Illuminae Files by Jay Kristoff and Amy Kaufman. I put this book off for the longest time because everybody was talking about it and everyone's saying how amazing it is, how unique it is, and I was like, I don't want to get on the bandwagon. And then I read it and I was like, ha, I'm stupid. This is amazing. Why didn't I read this sooner? I don't want to give anything away, but it's a space opera. There are 2 spaceships, you have 2 protagonists, and they're each on one ship, and something's going on. Not telling you what, but something's going on that involves them having to talk to each other. Some stuff goes down. This was amazing. It was, for me, really well done. I haven't read the 3rd book yet because, like with Esther Freisner's books, I don't want to read it because then that's it. That's the end of Illuminae. So I'm putting it off for as long as possible. If you haven't read it, do get into it. It's really, really entertaining. When people ask me what YA book I should recommend for like beginners, because it's formatted so uniquely, I always recommend this one because it'll definitely catch their eye. If you're just a casual reader, this is a very easy book to get into. Next, Spider-Man. A book cliche that's been done again and again and again, but you still love. I mentioned this earlier during the very first question. It would be going back to the Tudor era when it comes to books. Most of the Tudor era books that have been published usually revolve around Henry VIII, the big fat guy in the portraits, and his 6 wives. I've read countless Catherine of Aragon books, countless Anne Boleyn books, but every time a new one crops up in the bookstore, I'm like, I'm getting that, and I'm reading it yet again. I've read it so many times, the same old song and dance, and I never get sick of it. How many times have we seen Spider-Man on the big screen? How many times do we keep loving the Spider-Man character when it comes on screen? I thought that would be the most appropriate fit for that character. Next question would be the Winter Soldier. Now this has some indirect spoilers to the film, so if you don't want to know what the film is all about, skip like 1-2 minutes ahead. You're golden. The question is, what moment in a book or book series made you go, what? And then rethink everything that has happened in the book or series so far. Made you want to go back, made you want to reread the entire book because everything has changed. And for me, I had to go with, spoiler alert for Sarah J Maas books, Empire of Storms. This is the 5th book in her Throne of Glass books. So we're 5 books along in this epic fantasy series, and you find out that the villain has been pulling the strings the whole time. That everything that all the heroes have done, yes, they've acted of their own volition, but the situations they've found themselves in were not organic and have been caused by the big bad. And you're just like, damn it, it's been 5 books. Why are you pulling this on us now? So everything we've done for the last 5 books, 6 if you count the prequel, the big bad has seen it coming. That would be my Hail Hydra moment. So for the next question, we have Falcon, and it is, for lack of a better term, favorite second banana. But what I really mean is a character who has always been there but has never gotten the spotlight, but you know, is a pretty badass dude or dudette in his or her own right. And I would have to go with Raoul of Golden Lake from Tamora Pierce's Tortal series. He got enough screen time that you paid attention to him and rooted for him and cared about him, but he never got a book or he never got a chapter all to himself. He is one of my favorite characters in the series. He starts off with Alana as a young page and they're both training to be knights, and eventually in the future you see him as, spoiler alert, he ends up being the Knight Commander of the entire kingdom. You see his entire life from when he was 10 until he was 40. You grow and you love him so much, and he is such a badass. The best, most badass part of him I can't even say because it is a spoiler for the last book in this series. He is given a title. You know how in Game of Thrones Jaime is Kingslayer? He has a title similar to that makes him as epic, but I'm not gonna give it away. The next group of Avengers would be Guardians of the Galaxy. I got the idea for this question because when the first Guardians trailer came out of the first movie ever, everyone was like, what's going on? Up until that point, we've had the traditional superhero films where it gets kind of dark and it's very serious in tone, and then this trailer hops along with Star-Lord flipping us off, and then it turned out to be this massive hit. And because they're on a space ship, what is your favorite unlikely friend or relation ship? Ah! Please laugh. I went with Carswell Thorne and Crest from Marissa Meyer's Lunar Chronicles. All of the Lunar Chronicles are fairy tale retellings, but they're given a sci-fi twist. And this one in particular is a fairy tale retelling of Rapunzel. Instead of being locked up in a tower, she is locked up in a satellite way up in space, and she hasn't talked to anyone for years until this captain of a ship, who actually really reminds me of Star-Lord. Spoiler alert, they end up crashing the satellite and then they have to deal with surviving because they land in the desert. I thought that they were the most unlikely couple, and yet something in my heart really rooted for them. The next one I have is War Machine. I'm gonna keep it simple with this one. Your favorite pair of bros. War Machine has had Iron Man's back for the longest time. My favorite bros, there's Harry and Ron. There are a whole lot of very classic bro friendships, so I decided to try something different, and I went with Colin Khoo and Nick Young from Crazy Rich Asians by Kevin Kwan. And you know, they've been apart for a while. They've got very different temperaments and personalities. At the end of the day, they're there for each other and they're true bros. Big fancy lives aside, there's something very grounded in their relationship, and it kind of reminds me of my brother and his best friend, or me and my best friend. One of my best friends, she moved to the States around 3 years ago. I haven't seen her in person since, but like, you still feel the love and it's still there and it's still strong and your bond is still strong. That really reminds me of Colin and Nick's relationship, because Nick's been in New York all these years and then he finally comes home to be the best man at Colin's wedding, and it's like nothing has changed. The next Avenger is Scarlet Witch, and my question would be, which book character do you feel got the short end of the stick? I feel like Scarlet Witch cannot catch a break. Age of Ultron, her brother dies, and then she finally gets, you know, 2 years of happiness with her new boyfriend, and as weird as that relationship is, at the end of that relationship, she's forced to essentially kill her boyfriend for the greater good, and you're just like, this girl has been orphaned, parents-wise, sibling-wise, and now boyfriend-wise. She's lost them all. Can't this girl catch a break? And which book character do I think got the short end of the stick? I would have to go with Zell from Girls of Paper and Fire by Natasha Ngan. Zell is introduced halfway, I would say, through the book as the mentor of our protagonist, and spoiler alert, spoiler alert, spoiler alert for this book, she ends up dying way too early. Like, she's there to help our protagonist come to terms with her sexuality, and just when the going gets tough, she dies right at the beginning of the battle. I feel like she had so much more to offer plot-wise, especially since the ending of this book is gearing us up for a sequel. I feel like we really could have used her in future books, and instead she died way too early. Next up we have Vision, a book character who has undergone a drastic transformation. He goes from part AI, part brainchild of Tony and Bruce, part Ultron, and then he turns into something completely different. So which character do you feel in a book has undergone a big transformation, whether it be physical, supernatural transformation, emotional transformation, a huge character arc? You decide. And I went with Lena Broud from the Lux series by Anna Godbersen. So Lena Broud starts off as a ladies made in the book, and using her own wiles and being sneaky weaky like that, she ends up passing herself off as an heiress, and she renames herself Carolina Broad. This is a quartet, and for the second half of the series, it's her living that heiress life. Part of the plot surrounding her is her trying to keep people from finding out her secret that she's not rich at all. The situations she found herself in the first 2 books were grossly different than the situations and problems she found herself dealing with in the latter half of the series. So this would be my vision book. Second to the last Avenger, we have Ant-Man. I tried to think of, you know, really metaphorical questions or categories for this, like a tiny character who ended up having the biggest purpose of all, and then I was like, you know what? Keep it simple. Best YA dad. I'm sorry, I'm gonna bring up Tamora Pierce again, but for me, he is the best YA dad. It would be George Cooper from the Trickster duet, and I'm not gonna spoil anything other than he is a really good dad. So George, from the first series, we know he's king of thieves and then gets his act together. He turns spy master for the kingdom. I don't want to give anything away, but he passes on his tools and the tricks of the trade to his children. He never cheats them, definitely based on gender or station. George Cooper as a dad, man, that just very dreamy. So I wanted to go with him, and also because looking through my bookshelves, there aren't a lot of prominent dad figures that I've read in books. Most of the books have moms that play like a big part, and then if there are dads, they're garbage dads. So George Cooper was like a rare ray of light, and I'm not going to tell you who his wife is. I'm not going to tell you who his children are because I would be giving everything away. So I'm just gonna keep my lips zipped and say that he treats them well. He's a good papa. We started this at Iron Man. We're ending with Captain Marvel because she was the first Marvel female-led superhero film. I decided to go with the question, what book or what series did you want or did you wish you had around when you were younger, when you were growing up? I went with Ellen O's Prophecy series. This is a high fantasy series, and it's one of the first Eastern-based fantasies that I've read. This one is based on Korean mythology. By the time I had gotten to this, I was sort of a little bit aging out of the age group that this was in. I could still appreciate it, but I was sort of starting to feel like, ooh, this isn't meant for my age group anymore. And I wish it had been around when I was younger, just to see a kick-ass Asian heroine getting her own trilogy. And let's face it, growing up, I couldn't really pass for any Disney princess. I can push a Moana now, maybe, a Mulan, but I personally think I don't. I think I fall between them. Like, if Mulan and Moana had a baby, I would fall under that. You know, lately there have been books where I feel like I'm represented. I can cosplay as Girls of Paper and Fire. I can cosplay as, okay, maybe not necessarily a Korean heroine, but it was a step in the right direction. I wish that that had been around when I was younger. And that about does it for my original Avengers book tag. I am not gonna tag anyone in this here video. I will probably do it when I do the social media post. If you want to do this, go ahead. Boom, you've been tagged. Thank you for watching. You can follow me on my other bookish adventures on Twitter at Cuckoo for Books and on Instagram at Cuckoo for Books and at Salva Villarosa. Please subscribe. By the way, I've announced the winner of my Big Bad Wolf giveaway, and you can head over to the comments section of that video. I'm gonna leave a link down below to that video, and you can see the winner there. And that's about it. I will see you guys very soon. Bye, guys.